You can't close this road. 200 families live back there. That was the first thing Victoria Langford screamed at me that morning, loud enough to cut through the idling engines and the dry Colorado wind. I stood beside the steel gate at the entrance to Cole Ranch with one hand wrapped around a paper cup of coffee and the other holding a court order that was still warm from the printer. It was 7:04 a.m. The sun had barely cleared the ridge, and nearly 40 vehicles were already backed up along the asphalt behind her, brake lights glowing red through a thin veil of dust. Somewhere farther down the line, somebody leaned on a horn. Then another driver joined in. Vicky marched toward me in polished boots, her white SUV abandoned sideways near the HOA monument, its driver's door hanging open. "Ethan, open the gate." I took one slow sip of coffee. The bitter taste mixed with the smell of exhaust, dry grass, and hot brakes. A county deputy stood 10 feet to my right, saying nothing. That silence bothered Vicky more than anything I could have said. She turned toward him. "Officer, make him open it. Silver Creek Estates has used this road for years." The deputy glanced at the document in my hand. "Ma'am, I suggest you speak with your attorney." Her expression changed, just slightly. The confidence was still there, but something underneath it cracked. 3 months earlier, Vicky had sued me because she wanted permanent control over this road and part of my ranch. She told her board that one stubborn rancher couldn't stand in the way of 200 homeowners. She told the neighborhood I was holding families hostage over an outdated property line. She even stood in a packed HOA meeting and said, 200 families versus one man. Do the math. I remembered those words now as I unfolded the court order against the hood of my pickup. The paper fluttered in the morning breeze. Vicky stepped closer. Her perfume reached me before she did, sharp and expensive against the smell of dust and diesel. "What exactly do you think that paper says?" she demanded. I flattened the page with my palm and pointed to the sentence her attorneys had spent thousands of dollars accidentally helping me prove. No recorded permanent easement existed across Cole Ranch. Not for Silver Creek Estates. Not for its HOA. Not for the 200 homes sitting beyond my eastern fence. Vicky read it once. Then again. Behind her, the horn stopped. That sudden quiet felt heavier than the noise. She looked toward the road, then back at me. "That's impossible." I folded the order carefully. "Actually, Vicky, your lawsuit is what proved it." What she didn't understand yet was that I hadn't taken away Silver Creek's road. I hadn't destroyed anything, moved anything, or changed a single property line. The road beneath our boots had been exactly where it was for decades. The only thing that disappeared that morning was the HOA's claim that it belonged to them. And to understand how 200 expensive homes ended up depending on a road they had no permanent legal right to use, you have to go back to my father, an old survey map, and one sentence he told me years before Silver Creek existed. "Permission isn't ownership, son." My father, Walter Cole, bought the first 80 acres of what became Cole Ranch in 1987, back when the eastern edge of our county was mostly cattle fences, cottonwood trees, and two-lane roads that disappeared into the foothills. Over the years, he added neighboring parcels until the ranch covered 186 acres. I grew up there with dirt under my fingernails and gravel dust on my jeans. Dad believed land taught you patience if you paid attention. Water followed grade. Fence posts leaned when the soil shifted. Roads remembered every heavy truck that crossed them. By the time I was 12, I could tell which vehicle was coming toward the house just by listening to the tires on our gravel road. Dad drove an old Ford pickup with a loose toolbox that rattled over every washboard section. I can still hear it. I left Colorado in my 20s to study civil engineering, then spent almost 2 decades working construction projects across the Mountain West. Roads, drainage systems, retaining walls, culverts, utility corridors. Nothing glamorous. Just the infrastructure people notice only when it stops working. When Dad died, I came home and took over the ranch. His workshop looked almost untouched. Coffee can full of bent nails. Survey stakes stacked behind the door. Leather gloves hardened by years of sweat and dust. The place smelled like cedar shavings, machine oil, and the peppermint candies he always kept beside his workbench. That was where he stored the property records, inside a dented green metal box beneath a shelf of socket wrenches. I knew the box existed. I just never imagined it would someday matter to 200 families. Silver Creek had not existed when I was growing up. The land east of us belonged to a developer named Harrison Development Group, and for years it was nothing but scrub grass and open ground. Then one spring, survey flags appeared. After that came bulldozers, concrete trucks, framing crews, and the constant electronic beep of equipment backing up. Harrison planned a large subdivision behind our ranch, but they had a problem. Their easiest construction access crossed Dad's private road. They approached him with paperwork and asked permission to use roughly 1.8 miles of coal road while the subdivision was being built. Dad agreed because he was practical. Construction traffic needed somewhere to go, and the developer promised a permanent entrance would eventually connect Silver Creek directly to County Route 16. I remember asking him whether letting all those trucks through bothered him. He was standing at the workbench, cleaning dust from his glasses with the corner of his shirt. He looked at me and smiled. Permission is not ownership, son. At the time, it sounded like another one of Walter Cole's Little Ranch sayings. I forgot about it. Years passed. The construction trucks became moving vans. Moving vans became sport utility vehicles, school buses, landscaping trailers, and morning commuters. Silver Creek grew until 200 homes sat beyond our eastern boundary. The promised county entrance never seemed to appear. Nobody complained because Cole Road was already there. Convenient things have a way of becoming permanent in people's minds. Then Victoria Langford became president of the Silver Creek Homeowners Association, and convenience started turning into entitlement. Victoria Langford did not start by claiming the road. She started with signs. I came home one Thursday afternoon and found a brand new speed limit sign planted beside my north pasture. 20 miles per hour. Silver Creek Homeowners Association. The aluminum still shined, and fresh dirt was piled around the post. I stopped my truck, stepped out, and stared at it while the engine ticked behind me. Nobody had called. Nobody had asked permission. 3 days later, another sign appeared near the cattle gate warning residents that commercial vehicles required Homeowners Association approval. That one almost made me laugh. I ran a ranch. Feed trucks, fencing suppliers, equipment trailers, and utility crews had been using Cole Road since long before Silver Creek had matching mailboxes. I removed both signs and leaned them against the fence outside the subdivision entrance. The following morning, they were back. That was my first conversation with Vicky. She arrived in a spotless white Lexus sport utility vehicle, wearing pressed tin slacks and sunglasses large enough to hide half her expression. Her perfume reached me over the smell of sun-warmed pine and road dust. "Those signs are community property," she said. "They were installed for resident safety." I looked down at the gravel beneath her shoes. "This is ranch property." Her smile tightened. "This road services Silver Creek. That does not make it yours." She gave me the kind of patient look people use when they think they are explaining something obvious to a child. "Mr. Cole, 200 households depend on this entrance. At some point, practical reality matters more than an old technicality." There it was. Technicality. My deed had become a technicality. Within a month, the Homeowners Association installed 2 cameras on wooden poles near the entrance. Then came reflective markers, neighborhood directional signs, and a private security company driving a golf cart along the shoulder. I documented everything. Dates, photographs, locations. I sent Vicky a certified letter reminding her that Cole Road crossed private property and that no improvements could be installed without my written permission. Her response arrived on thick Homeowners Association letterhead. She claimed Silver Creek had established access rights through continuous use. Then she included something I had to read twice. A violation notice. My ranch truck, a dusty blue Ford with a flatbed and toolboxes, had been classified as an unauthorized commercial vehicle because I regularly drove it through what she called the Silver Creek community entrance. The fine was $75. I stood in my kitchen holding that paper while my coffee maker hissed behind me. They were fining me for driving my own truck on my own road. I did not pay it. 2 weeks later, the fine became $150. Then Vicky hired contractors to paint white edge lines along the first half mile without telling me. The sharp chemical smell of road paint hung over the pasture all afternoon. That evening, I found her supervising workers beside a new stone monument that read Silver Creek Estates. One corner of its concrete foundation sat several feet inside my surveyed boundary. I asked her to stop construction. She crossed her arms. "This entrance needs to represent our community properly." I told her the monument had to move. Her smile disappeared. "You need to understand something, Ethan. This road is bigger than your ranch now. I looked past her at the fresh paint, the cameras, the signs, and the stone monument sitting on coal land. That was when I realized Vicky was not asking for permission anymore. She was building a paper trail designed to make it look like she had never needed it. The lawsuit arrived on a Monday morning in an envelope thick enough to make my stomach tighten before I opened it. I was standing at the kitchen counter with mud drying on my boots when I saw the county court stamp across the top page. Silver Creek Estates Homeowners Association was asking a judge to recognize a permanent access easement across Cole Road. That alone was bad enough. Then I reached page 14. They also wanted an additional strip along the eastern edge of my ranch for road widening, drainage improvements, and what they called necessary community infrastructure. I read that phrase 3 times. Necessary community infrastructure. They had installed their signs, cameras, painted lines, and stone monument without permission, and now they were using those changes as evidence that the road functioned as part of their neighborhood. It was clever. Aggressive, but clever. Vicky was trying to turn years of convenience into ownership, one piece of paper at a time. I called Rachel Bennett that afternoon. Rachel was a property attorney in Fort Collins who had spent 20 years untangling boundary disputes, easements, and development agreements. She drove out the next morning in an older Subaru with survey maps covering the passenger seat. We walked the road together while wind pushed dry grass against the fence wire. She photographed the cameras, measured the stone monument, and stopped beside one of the fresh white lines. "They are creating facts on the ground," she said. I knew exactly what she meant. If something looks public long enough, people begin treating it like it is public. The first court hearing did not give me much comfort. Douglas Pierce, the Homeowners Association attorney, arrived with binders full of subdivision maps, traffic studies, maintenance invoices, and photographs showing years of Silver Creek residents using Cole Road. He argued that removing access would create an unreasonable hardship for 200 households. Rachel argued that hardship did not create ownership. The judge did not decide the easement question that day, but issued a temporary order requiring me to keep the road open while the case proceeded. Vicky walked out of the courthouse, smiling. By that evening, Silver Creek residents had already heard her version. I discovered how ugly it had become when I attended their next board meeting. The clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. Every folding chair was occupied. People stood along the walls. Vicky sat beneath the Homeowners Association seal with a microphone in front of her and described me as a ranch owner threatening neighborhood stability. Then she looked directly at me. 200 families versus 1 man, she said. Do the math. A few people applauded. I stayed quiet. Then Vicky displayed a proposed entrance expansion on the projector. The yellow boundary did not stop at the road. It cut nearly 30 feet into my pasture. That was when everything became clear. This was never only about keeping access. They wanted enough of my land to make their entrance permanent, wider, cleaner, and more valuable. After the meeting, Vicky caught me near the door. "You can fight this for years," she said softly. "Or you can sell us what we need." I could smell her coffee as she handed me an offer. The number was insulting. I folded the paper once and put it in my jacket. No, her expression hardened. "Then the court can decide." I looked back at the crowded room and understood her strategy. She believed 200 homeowners created pressure I could never match. What Vicky did not know was that courts care about documents, and somewhere inside my father's old records was a document neither of us had read in years. For the next 3 weeks, I learned exactly how expensive patience could be. Every letter from Douglas Pierce seemed to arrive with another deadline attached. Requests for documents. Requests for surveys. Requests for maintenance records going back 15 years. Rachel warned me that property cases could move slowly, and Silver Creek had something I did not have. 200 households paying monthly dues into the same legal fund. I was paying my attorney out of my own savings. At night, the ranch felt different. I would sit at the kitchen table beneath the yellow light over the sink, listening to tires hum along Cole Road while invoices covered the table beside my coffee. Those vehicles used to sound ordinary. Now, every set of headlights passing my window reminded me that a judge had temporarily ordered me to leave my own gate open. The pressure followed me into town. At the feed store, a man wearing a Silver Creek baseball cap recognized me and asked why I was trying to block families from reaching their homes. At the gas station, another resident told me his daughter rode the school bus over that road every morning. Neither man was rude. That almost made it worse. They were worried, and Vicky had convinced them I was the reason they should be worried. One evening, a father named Daniel Mercer pulled into the ranch while I was repairing a section of fence. His minivan was dusty, and there was a child safety seat visible through the rear window. He told me his wife worked nights at the hospital. He asked what would happen if an ambulance ever needed access and the road closed. I set my fencing pliers on the tailgate. Daniel, I do not want your family trapped behind anything. He studied me for a second, like that answer did not match the man he had heard about at the Homeowners Association meetings. Then why fight it, he asked. I looked toward the subdivision entrance. Because if they can take this road by pretending permission means ownership, they can take the next 30 feet the same way. He left without arguing. That conversation stayed with me. For the first time, I seriously considered selling the strip Vicky wanted just to end everything. That night, I carried her offer into Dad's workshop. Rain tapped against the metal roof, and the room smelled exactly as I remembered it. Cedar, machine oil, old leather, and dust. I placed the offer on his workbench and stared at the green metal document box beneath the socket shelf. The latch resisted before opening with a dry metallic click. Inside were tax receipts, hand-drawn fence measurements, old surveys, and envelopes browned around the edges. Near the bottom, underneath a 1991 drainage map, I found a folded document with Harrison Development Group printed across the top. Temporary access agreement. My pulse slowed. I sat on Dad's wooden stool and unfolded it carefully. The paper felt thin and brittle between my fingers. His signature was at the bottom beside the developer's. I read the first page, then the second. Most of it was ordinary legal language about construction traffic and road maintenance. Then one sentence stopped me. The permission to use Cole Road continued only until permanent secondary access was constructed and accepted by the county. I read it again. Then I walked to the wall where Dad had kept an old county map pinned behind his work calendar. Silver Creek sat east of the ranch. Cole Road entered from the west. I traced every marked street with my finger. There was no second entrance. I called Rachel even though it was nearly 10 o'clock. She answered on the fourth ring. I found something, I said. There was a pause. What kind of something? I looked down at Dad's signature. Outside, tires whispered over the wet gravel towards Silver Creek. The kind that makes me wonder whether they ever had permanent access at all. Rachel was at the ranch before 8 the next morning. She spread the agreement across my kitchen table beside 3 county maps and read every line without speaking. The only sound was the refrigerator humming and rainwater dripping from the porch roof. Finally, she tapped one sentence with her pen. This changes the question. I leaned closer. From what? From whether Silver Creek has used your road long enough to claim permanent access to whether their original right to use it ever became permanent in the first place. That distinction sounded small. It was not. We drove to the county records office that afternoon. The building smelled like copier toner and old carpet, and Rachel spent nearly 4 hours requesting subdivision plats, planning approvals, engineering reports, and recorded easements connected to Silver Creek. I knew construction documents, so I started comparing dates. Harrison Development had received preliminary approval with Cole Road listed as temporary construction access. 2 years later, the final subdivision documents showed a second connection on the eastern boundary labeled secondary emergency and residential access. According to the approval sheet, that road had been completed and accepted before the final phase of Silver Creek opened. I stared at the map. Rachel, I know that ridge. She looked at me. And there is no road there. The next morning we drove around to the eastern side of Silver Creek. Where the county documents showed pavement, there was a drainage ditch, a wire fence, and several hundred yards of knee-high grass. No asphalt, no curb, no intersection, not even an abandoned roadbed. Wind moved through the weeds with a dry hiss. Rachel took photographs while I paced the supposed center line using coordinates from the recorded plat. The paperwork said a road existed beneath my boots. The ground said otherwise. That was when the lawsuit stopped feeling like a property dispute and started feeling like an engineering problem, and engineering problems leave records. Rachel requested inspection files. I pulled historical aerial photographs and old project drawings. We found grading plans showing the secondary entrance in early designs, then later revisions quietly removing portions of it. Yet the final approval package still contained a certification stating that required access improvements had been completed. Someone had signed that certification. Someone else had accepted it. And for years, nobody had noticed because everyone simply kept driving across Cole Ranch. Rachel leaned back in her chair when we found the county acceptance page. If this is what it looks like, Silver Creek has a much bigger problem than your 30 feet of pasture. I understood immediately. Their entire argument depended on Cole Road being treated as permanent community access. But Dad's agreement said their permission ended when the promised secondary access was completed. Their development records claimed that completion had already happened. Both things could not help them at once. If the second road existed legally, their temporary permission across our ranch had expired. If it had never been completed, then somebody had approved 200 homes without the permanent access shown in the development plan. Either answer opened a door Vicky had never expected. I remembered her standing beneath the Homeowners Association seal saying, 200 families versus one man. Do the math. Now the arithmetic looked different. 200 families had bought homes believing their neighborhood had secure access. I did not want them punished for paperwork they had never seen. But I was finished allowing Vicky to use those families as leverage to take more of my land. Rachel gathered the documents into a neat stack. Do not tell the Homeowners Association what we found yet. I looked at her. Why not? She slid the county certification toward me. Because they sued you, Ethan. Let them explain their version under oath first. Rachel's advice was simple. Say less, document everything, and let Vicky believe she was winning. So I did. For the next 2 weeks, I kept Cole Road open under the temporary court order and watched Silver Creek traffic roll past my fence every morning. School buses, delivery vans, commuters carrying coffee, landscaping trailers rattling over the pavement. Nothing changed on the surface. Underneath it, everything was changing. Rachel filed requests for Harrison Development's original engineering records, construction schedules, inspection reports, and correspondence with the county. She also requested every Homeowners Association document mentioning Cole Road. Douglas Pierce responded with hundreds of pages. Most were useless. Meeting minutes, maintenance invoices, landscaping contracts. Then we found something valuable. 5 years earlier, Vicky had signed a board resolution describing Cole Road as the permanent western entrance to Silver Creek. There was no deed attached, no recorded easement, just confidence printed on expensive paper. Rachel smiled when she read it. Keep this. The depositions started the following Tuesday. Douglas spent nearly 3 hours asking me whether I had ever physically prevented residents from using the road before the lawsuit. I answered carefully. No. Had my father allowed subdivision traffic? Yes. Had our family accepted road maintenance performed by Silver Creek contractors? Occasionally. Did I understand that hundreds of residents relied on the route? Of course. Douglas seemed satisfied. Then Rachel questioned Vicky. I sat across the conference table while the air conditioner hummed above us. Vicky wore a navy blazer and the same controlled expression she used at board meetings. Rachel asked who owned Cole Road. Silver Creek has permanent access rights, Vicky said. Rachel asked where those rights were recorded. Vicky looked toward Douglas. Our attorneys can provide that. Rachel asked whether Vicky had authorized the cameras, signs, painted lines, and stone monument. Yes. As president, I was responsible for maintaining our community. Entrance. Rachel asked whether she believed the Homeowners Association had authority to widen that entrance onto my pasture. Yes. Then came the question I had been waiting for. And you are asking the court to confirm those rights permanently? Vicky leaned forward. Absolutely. Rachel closed her folder. That afternoon, Vicky sent another purchase offer. The number was higher this time, but still nowhere close to what permanent control of the corridor would be worth. Rachel told me to respond with 4 words. Put it in writing. Vicky did. Her revised offer specifically stated that Silver Creek needed my land to secure and expand its primary permanent access. Another document for the stack. Meanwhile, a licensed survey crew arrived at the ranch. Orange flags appeared along the old property line. Their wooden stakes made sharp knocking sounds as they drove them into the dry Colorado soil. The survey confirmed what Dad's maps had shown for decades. The cameras were on my land. The monument was on my land. Parts of the painted roadway improvements crossed my land. Then the county engineering office called Rachel. They had reviewed the historical approval file and wanted an on-site inspection of the eastern secondary entrance. Vicky still thought she was fighting one rancher over 30 feet of pasture. She had no idea county engineers were standing in knee-high grass where an approved road was supposed to exist. 3 days later, Rachel received an email from the county. She printed it, drove straight to the ranch, and placed it on my kitchen table. The county could find no evidence that the required secondary access had ever been constructed or formally accepted. I looked at the sentence for a long time. Rachel tapped the page once. Now we let the judge do the math. The hearing lasted 43 minutes before Vicky realized the case had turned against her. I knew the exact moment because her pen stopped moving. Until then, she had been sitting beside Douglas Pierce with a yellow legal pad, writing notes whenever Rachel spoke. Douglas began exactly where I expected. He showed years of traffic records, maintenance invoices, photographs of school buses using Cole Road, and statements from residents who had relied on it since buying their homes. He called the road essential community infrastructure. Then he asked the judge to recognize permanent access and approve the additional corridor Silver Creek wanted along my pasture. The courtroom smelled like old wood, paper, and burnt coffee from somewhere beyond the clerk's desk. I kept my hand still on the table. Rachel stood and carried one document forward. Dad's temporary access agreement. She explained when it had been signed, why Harrison Development needed it, and the condition written into the agreement. Permission continued only until permanent secondary access was constructed and accepted by the county. Douglas immediately argued that decades of use had changed the situation. Rachel did not argue back. She placed the final Silver Creek development approval beside Dad's agreement. According to Harrison's own paperwork, the secondary access had been completed years earlier. That created the first problem. If the development records were accurate, the temporary permission across Cole Road had already ended. Then Rachel placed the county engineer's findings beside them. No secondary road existed. No pavement. No accepted connection. No inspection record confirming completion. The room became completely quiet. Douglas shuffled through his binder. Vicky leaned toward him and whispered something I could not hear. Rachel continued. She showed the survey confirming that the Homeowners Association monument, cameras, signs, and portions of its road improvements had been installed inside Cole Ranch boundaries. Then she showed Vicky's written offer stating Silver Creek needed to purchase my land to secure its permanent primary access. That document mattered because it contradicted the argument that the Homeowners Association already possessed everything it needed. The judge looked over his glasses at Douglas. Counsel, where is the recorded permanent easement? Douglas turned pages. For the first time since this started, he did not have an immediate answer. He referenced continuous use, reliance, and development history. The judge asked again, where is the recorded instrument granting this association permanent access across Mr. Cole's property? Silence. I heard the ventilation system click on above us. Rachel did not smile. Neither did I. This was not about humiliating anyone. 200 families had mortgages, jobs, school schedules, deliveries, and emergency needs tied to whatever happened next. The judge denied Silver Creek's request to establish the permanent rights it had claimed and ordered the county access issue reviewed before any further expansion could proceed. The temporary order forcing me to treat Cole Road as unrestricted Homeowners Association access would expire after a short transition period, subject to emergency arrangements. Vicky stared straight ahead. Outside the courthouse, several Silver Creek residents waited for answers. Daniel Mercer was among them. Vicky walked past without stopping. Douglas followed her. Daniel looked at me. Does this mean we lose the road? I shook my head. It means your Homeowners Association has to prove what it promised you actually exists. By sunset, the county had scheduled an emergency access meeting. By morning, homeowners were demanding copies of the development records. The equation Vicky had used against me had finally reversed. It was no longer 200 families versus one rancher. It was 200 families asking one homeowners association how their neighborhood had been sold without permanent legal access. By the time I returned to Cole Road at 7:04 that morning, the argument was already over. The court order in my hand did not give me permission to punish Silver Creek. It simply confirmed that the homeowners association could no longer treat my ranch road as property it controlled. Vicky stood beside the gate staring at the line of vehicles behind her while the county deputy explained that emergency access would remain available under the temporary transition plan Rachel and I had helped arrange. I had agreed to that before the hearing was finished. Ambulances, fire crews, school transportation, and residents with immediate needs would not be trapped because their board had failed them. But ordinary, unrestricted Homeowners Association access was, ending while the county forced Silver Creek to establish a lawful permanent route. Vicky looked at me as if she could not understand why I was not celebrating. "You wanted this," she said. I folded the order and slipped it into my jacket. "No, I wanted you to stop taking what was never yours." Within a week, Silver Creek held an emergency board meeting. This time the clubhouse was louder than I had ever heard it. Homeowners wanted records, dates, contracts, and explanations. Daniel Mercer later told me Vicky tried to blame Harrison Development, the county, my father, and eventually me. None of it worked. Her own signatures were sitting in the files. The board removed her as president pending an internal review, and the county opened a formal examination of how the subdivision had received final approval without the secondary access shown on its plans. Harrison Development's old records were pulled from storage. Lawyers started making calls. Engineers started measuring. For once, none of those people were standing on my side of the property line. Silver Creek eventually approved funding for a permanent eastern connection to County Route 16, exactly where the original development plans had shown 1 year earlier. During construction, I allowed residents limited temporary use of Cole Road under a written agreement Rachel drafted. Every condition was recorded. Every boundary was surveyed. Every responsibility was spelled out. No assumptions. No handshake promises. When the new entrance finally opened, the morning traffic disappeared almost overnight. The ranch became quiet again. A few days later, contractors arrived to remove the Homeowners Association cameras, signs, painted markers, and stone monument from my property. I stood beside the fence while a worker lifted the Silver Creek Estates plaque away from the entrance. Underneath it, leaning against the barn wall where I had stored it years earlier, was Dad's old wooden sign. Cole Ranch. Private road. I cleaned the dust from it and mounted it beside the gate. The wood was weathered, and one corner had split, but I left it that way. That evening, I sat on the porch with coffee while the sun dropped behind. The foothills. No commuter traffic. No security card. No Homeowners Association signs. Just wind moving through dry grass and the faint rattle of Dad's old toolbox in my truck when I shifted it in the driveway. I thought about Vicky telling that crowded room to do the math. 200 families against one man. She had misunderstood the equation from the beginning. Those families were never my enemy. They were the leverage she thought would force me to surrender something my father had protected decades before she arrived. Dad had understood what Vicky never did. Permission can last years. Convenience can feel permanent. People can repeat a claim until everyone assumes it must be true. But none of that changes where the boundary lies. Vicky went to court trying to take part of my ranch. All she really accomplished was asking a judge to confirm that her Homeowners Association had never owned the road beneath her feet. Permission was never ownership. Thank you for watching this story. If Ethan Cole's patience, respect for his father's legacy, and determination to protect what legally belonged to his family inspired you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends who enjoy compelling HOA dramas and stories where documents and facts defeat entitlement. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable HOA conflicts, property rights battles, and real-life justice stories. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story about forgotten agreements, disputed boundaries, and ordinary property owners who quietly stand their ground when years of convenience are mistaken for legal ownership. Your support helps us continue bringing these remarkable stories to life, and we cannot wait to share the next one with you. That if you were in Ethan Cole's position, would you have sold the HOA the land they wanted just to end the dispute, or would you have kept fighting until the records proved that permission was never ownership? Tell us your choice in the comments and explain why.